Hello once again, and welcome back to the Gaming News Canada show presented by GBG PLC. As always, I'm your host, Steve McAllister. Some 365 days ago, the American Gaming Association estimated a record 68 million Americans would wager $23.1 billion on the 50-day Super Bowl. That was a 35% increase from the previous year, and it's a safe bet those numbers will rise once again this year as the Kansas City Chiefs look for their third straight NFL championship by defeating the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday evening at Caesars Superdome in New Orleans. While it's expected there'll be lots of the usual action on money lines, totals, and those ever-expanding player prop bets involving Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Kareem Hunt, Jalen Hurts, and Saquon Barkley, among others, there will also be the cornucopia of novelty wagers around the coin toss, the color of Gatorade that lands on either Andy Reid or Nick Sirianni at game's end, the length of the John Baptiste's rendition of the Star Spangled Banner, or the song selection by halftime show headliner Kendrick Lamar. For more on Sunday's big game and to converse about some other topics in the gambling space and here in Ontario and Canada, we welcome back to the podcast from FanDuel, the Vice President of Marketing, Tom Burdakin, and the Director of Content, Activations, and Brand, Della Vedova. Hey, Alana, thank you so much for being here once again.
Thanks for having me once again. It's a third time's a charm, I guess. You keep on inviting me back.
This is the Gaming News Canada show version of the Gordie Howe hat trick then Alana. And
that's a good title to have.
Yeah, and Tom, you're getting close to getting those Gaming News Canada frequent flyer points. I think this is your second appearance on the podcast, but seriously, grateful to you both for doing this. And we are recording this late on a Friday afternoon, so I appreciate both of you sticking around the office a little bit late today, Tom.
Hey, no problem. This time of year, there's nothing else going on. We got nothing else to do. So,
and it's fun, Tom. I want to start. Delana and I were talking off camera, and I just got thinking. It was 10 years ago, I think, this week, where I was jumping on a plane to fly to Russia for the 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics, working for Yahoo Canada at the time, and there was always an adrenaline rush around the Olympics or a Stanley Cup Finals or what in the journalism business we used to call those tentpole and anchor events. And Alana, I'll maybe start with you. And I just wonder, how Super Bowl week stacks up with the rest of the calendar year for you and the rest of the folks at FanDuel.
It's definitely one of the biggest and busiest for the team. I think it's twofold. One, we have an amazing group of teammates who are just excited for football and excited to bring our new product. As you know, we kind of migrated over to the US version of the product. So there's a lot new features for us to explore and for fans to engage with. But it is crazy. It is a little bit nuts. It's a heightened time of the year. And so everyone's, working really hard to bring the best experience to fans. But it is a little bit chaotic, but exciting all at the same time.
Hey, Tom, I believe this is your first Super Bowl in your new role at FanDuel, correct?
That's correct. Yep.
What a great way to start. I mean, I know Alana would prefer the Green Bay Packers were playing in Sunday's big game, but listen, a Kansas City Philadelphia matchup is pretty good for everybody, right?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of great storylines, regardless of who would have come out on top, but definitely a lot of interest, of course, in, whether or not there's going to be the three-peat. And, one difference between the Canada market and the US market is the fact that we have, novelty bets and things up here. And I think, of course, Taylor Swift always draws a whole bunch of extra interest in that particular area of the business. And so, it's always fun every single year. It's a great activation opportunity and, new challenges every single time.
Yeah, Alana, the novelty bets is a great place, I think, to really kind of get going the conversation around the Super Bowl. And as Tom mentions, I mean, if you go on the FanDuel app, I mean, it's crazy some of the prop or now those novelty bets that are available. I saw something this week preparing for the podcast on something called the Swell Seeds, which I hope maybe you can explain a little bit. The one thing I'm curious about is there, when you're trying to come up with these novelty bets, I'm assuming that there are more than traders involved with this, because FanDuel, you're doing, I think, novelty bets around the Grammys and around the Oscars. And I don't know if you call it popular culture or vox populi or whatever Alana, whatever the phrase is with the cool people. You're a lot younger than Tom and I are. But just how do these novelty bets come about at FanDuel?
I love being dubbed as the cool kid, but you did mention it. We do have a full-time novelty trader, so that's super important to us, is that we're following the storylines, we're looking at pop culture, but we're also pricing this accurately. So we're looking at if there's any past data trends, looking at news lines, working with compliance. So they are, as you mentioned, just a super fun way. And a lot of it is brainstorming of what's going on and what's being talked about, and odds that maybe you would have been talking about with your friends anyways, if Travis Kelce will propose to Taylor Swift, which is what a swelsey market is. And they're great for responsible gaming. We have low maximum bet amounts on a novelty market. So it's a very good entry point for potentially a newer bettor that's excited and kind of closer to the pop culture type of conversation, more so than the X's and O's of the football game.
Yeah, I think, Tom, it's important to point out that these types of wagers aren't especially that new. I mean, I think there's been lots of times where we've sat around with friends watching a football game on a Sunday or a Super Bowl or a Grey Cup, and we each put a loonie on the table and say, hey, what's going to be the first song that Tom Petty sings at the Super Bowl halftime show, or what's going to be the last song that Rihanna or Lady Gaga sings. And so these bets are meant to have fun. I know sometimes there are debates around prop bets and concerns around prop bets, but these novelty bets, as Alana points out, these bets aren't made for people to make a lot of money or lose a lot of money. It really is about entertainment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Super Bowl itself, right, is often associated with celebration with your friends and betting on things like whether the coin toss will be heads or tails, or if the Gatorade color is going to be red or orange. Those are the things that, in addition to the fun commercials that we get to see every year, really can kind of keep folks engaged throughout the entirety of the game. And of course, as Alana said, being kind of having a low stakes angle to it also, reminds everybody that it's just for fun and keeps them engaged throughout the game. So yeah, it's definitely something that, we really like to promote. And I think it provides consistency with our brand, which is all about, engaging with fellow fans and just making the game a little bit more fun.
Those bets too, Alana, they really align with the audience for a Super Bowl. I mean, it's not just, crazy diehard football fans who are watching the Super Bowl. I mean, it's why the NFL has been so smart in bringing on board big time performers for the halftime show, and we've seen the CFL kind of adopt the same strategy with the Grey Cup in recent years. But yeah, this isn't a bunch of guys sitting in the basement with their hats and jerseys on that are going to be watching this game on Sunday night.
No, it's a much broader audience, and the NFL has kind of proven that it is really a cultural moment. There's music, there's entertainment, there's fashion, there's all aspects to kind of appeal to a broad range of fan, whether you're, the diehard with the jerseys in the basement or someone who's actually just going to tune into one quarter of the football game. And that's where we thrive best. We just want to engage and meet the customers where they are and through their own interests. And that's what novelty is a little bit all about.
Also, I think the other thing I want to mention about the Super Bowl too is the Kick of Destiny campaign, and again, it's a smart segue, I think, to go from Rob Gronkowski to Peyton and Eli Manning, who have become two. Who would have ever thought 15 years ago that Eli and Peyton Manning would be considered really cool brands and people that had such a great following and have become really just fantastic entertainers, not just in sports, but the sports and entertainment business. And Tom, I do think it was quite clever that there was an Ontario themed slant to this campaign and running those commercials from Destiny Ontario. And is that really just reflecting the investment that FanDuel's made in Ontario, or is there a bit more to that story?
Oh, absolutely. I think everything that we think about when we're, considering what kind of a campaign we want to do is A, how can we leverage, what the US does best, but B, how can we also appeal uniquely to, to Ontario, to fans here, to bettors here. And that's kind of the angle that we went with the Town of Destiny campaign. It's very fun. It's cheeky. It resonates a lot with the folks here. And it also obviously sticks to the regulatory frameworks that are required by the AGCO. And so I think, it kind of gives us an opportunity to not only build excitement around something that the US is obviously investing a lot behind, but also gives us an opportunity to kind of build our own Marvel Cinematic Universe here with the Town of Destiny and try new things. So really, really excited about that campaign.
Yeah, I think the other thing too, Alan, is I think there has been a habit in this marketplace where I think maybe more so in the early days where Ontarians were taken a little bit for granted by a lot of the operators who are based in the US and thought that American slanted commercials would automatically translate here. I think that's the one thing FanDuel has done, along with operators, through the TSN partnership and through campaigns like this, that you recognize that Ontario is a unique market, even though we both know that there are a lot of similarities. And of course, we follow the NFL, and here in Ontario, you have a base of Buffalo Bills fans, you have Detroit Lions fans, but this is a unique market.
It is, and we take a lot of pride in that too, and just being very consumer and customer focused. And you hit it, like we have localized partnerships, we work with local media. We really want to connect with that customer, and there are differences. I think not a lot of customers want to be spoken to the same way more broadly, regardless of what your brand is, if it's north of the border or south. So we really took this opportunity to do something truly unique that also just focuses on the event that's happening. That Kick of Destiny now in its own right has become a bit of a tradition. Speaking of, the three-peat and the Gordie Howe hat trick, this is the third year in a row. So there's a little anticipation for it in Canada, and we wanted to approach it exactly like you said, in a different way and speak to the market a little bit differently.
I'll throw this question out to the two of you, and you can figure out who answers it. But just in terms of again, I'm always reluctant to give Dale Hooper credit publicly, but obviously, the partnership with TSN pays off nicely for you in terms of having the Super Bowl on CTV on Sunday, and I assume again that there will be a lot of synergies, but within that partnership for the Super Bowl game.
We'll definitely have FanDuel Sunday. We will be there supporting the sports narrative and providing some insightful odds to just weave into the storyline as authentic as we can be. So very fortunate for the TSN partnership, and even leveraging a little bit of our Kick of Destiny. You might be seeing, the town woven throughout some of the conversation there as a little Easter egg, but they're definitely super supportive of us, and likewise with us with them.
Yeah, I was going to say, not only do we benefit obviously from, the great reach that they have, but just the collaborative nature in which that they work with us makes it very, very easy. And they're willing to, take chances with stuff we want to do and vice versa. And it's just been a great partnership all around.
Hey, I want to switch gears a bit and talk about iGaming Ontario released its latest market performance report a week or so ago. And one of the trends that really stuck out is this the investment by customers in iGaming. I mean, we're seeing about, I think it's pushing 85% now of total wagers in Ontario with the 50 operators is being spent on iGaming. And I just wonder, Alana and Tom, is that customer, are you seeing the same thing with the activity at FanDuel?
Yeah, I think, if you were to survey everyone in Ontario, people tend to associate us with sports, but a lot of people don't know. They're increasingly learning that, we've got a really premium online casino product, and we're one of the market leaders in that respect as well. And so not only are we appealing to those cross-sell customers or those who, might dabble a little bit in casino, we also have been leaning in on exclusive game content, which is something that's really, really important to that casino-led customer. For example, we've got Light and Wonder's Huff and More Puff slot game, soon to be exclusively released on FanDuel Casino, beginning in early February. And that's just one example of several pieces of content that we've gained exclusivity over that are really, really important to that casino-led customer. And so, yeah, we definitely view iGaming and casino as a central part of our business.
Atlanta, there seems to be such chaos, probably isn't the right word, but it's almost like the whole online gaming thing where it seems people are always looking for more products, and we've seen things like, Wheel of Fortune games and those kinds of brands. And it feels like every week I see 2 or 3 press releases where an operator is teamed up with an online gaming supplier to showcase a new game and people creating new games. And have you seen, are there any trends that you're seeing at FanDuel in terms of the kinds of casino games that people are really leaning into, or are there games that are becoming more and more popular?
Yeah, it's definitely closer to what you would see on a casino room floor. We found through a lot of our research that those kind of connections to, the nostalgia of potentially if you used to go to a land-based casino or still do, and even want the option to maybe stay in one Saturday night as opposed to going out. So that's been the trend, is really that connection to the more popular games that have been kind of historically great on the floor and now kind of brought exclusively to you by FanDuel. We've seen that with Wonka we have as a game that was launched exclusively, and to Tom's point, the Huff and More Puff game was also a casino floor game that we're bringing over.
Hey, Tom, I have to think that there's probably there's a different strategy in Ontario with iCasino. As we've talked about on the show many times in the past. Legal iGaming is still only available in, I think, eight states in the U.S., and we know there are a lot of lobbying going on to expand that. In Ontario, as we mentioned, there's obviously a very great demand for iGaming casino. I just wonder how the marketing strategy is reflected with that demand.
Well, I think to a point that I mentioned earlier about investing in the casino-led customer, the U.S. has done a really good job of doing that over the past few years. When I first started at FanDuel a handful of years ago, we were entirely focused on casino from the perspective of just cross-selling and that efficiency play, getting them into sports, and then seeing if they're interested in the casino side of the business. I think increasingly, as we've gotten further and further down the road here, when you look at media investment from competitors and other players in the industry, that casino-led customer is an area that a lot of operators are going after. And to Alana's point, as she just mentioned, the reason why you see increasing popularity in online titles that are known for their retail casino play is because you've got a lot of customers who are still migrating over to online that weren't even aware that they can play on their phone if they don't want to go driving out in the freezing cold in the middle of winter. And so that's the great thing about, I think, the casino side of the business especially, is there's a lot of runway despite how mature the category is at this point, several years in. And that means we have more opportunity to invest in it directly rather than just rely on that cross-sell from sports.
Yeah, and Alana, putting on your content hat, I think we've seen that in Ontario as well, where there's been a shift by operators to where we are seeing more casino-led content now on social media channels and on other platforms.
It's true. And I think it's just the smarter thing to do. We were maybe not as bullish on casino when we first entered the market, and we should have been, right? It's not necessarily that we needed to wait to see the market share results to know that casino was leading the way in Ontario. It's maybe a forgotten strategy that some operators are now starting to catch up a little bit.
Makes me wonder too, Tom, that just, we're a couple of years out of COVID now, and we saw during COVID, obviously, for casinos were shut down. There's been a great debate in the U.S. about cannibalization around land-based casinos and online casinos. And I think when you look at the numbers and you see what's going on, I think you see that there's room for both retail casinos and online casinos. And I think the people that understand that are going to succeed over the long run.
Yeah, I mean, that's a debate that's gone on as long as this industry has been live and thriving. I've seen it so many times in the US when they're debating whether or not a state should open. There's always that cannibalization argument. And I don't want to say it's been disproven time and time again, but I think there's a lot of evidence to suggest that, it really isn't a problem. You've got, it's not a matter of slicing the pie one way or the other. The pie is expanding when you have online alongside retail. And then there's lots of opportunities to combine loyalty programs and things like that. So yeah, I think, it's been proven time and time again that, some of those concerns in the beginning were maybe a little bit overblown.
Yeah, I would just add to, I completely agree. It's just a different experience. They're catering to two different customer experiences, and there's room for both.
Yeah. Hey, gaming news guys. Are you ready to win a bigger share of Canada's rapidly expanding gaming market? Then GBG are ready to help. As the global leaders in identity verification, GBG partner with over 60% of iGaming Ontario brands to help them onboard more players, maximize match rates, and deliver FinTrack compliance. Visit gbgplc.com today and talk to the trust experts. Hey, Alana, we always like, when we get operators and we get people like yourself and Tom on the show, we always like to talk a little bit of responsible gambling. There's even a little bit of news attached to it right now. I'm sure you both saw the announcement from the NFL last week that it's done a partnership deal with the Responsible Gambling Council to create some RG education / training programs for student athletes in Canadian colleges and universities. I think there's not enough we can do to that end. And then we also saw the announcement from ESPN last week that they're going to launch these RG commercials now featuring one of their talent, Al Duncan. And given the tight relationship that FanDuel has with TSN, it really does beg the question. I mean, is there a day where we might see Davis Sanchez on the NFL show doing something around RG, or Jeff O'Neill on TSN Overdrive doing some responsible gambling messaging, or even Mystic Mike Johnson, who's Mike Johnson was doing betting related segments on TSN's hockey coverage before the market even opened here in Ontario.
RG is part of our marketing fabric. It's something that's at the forefront for all of us here. And so we've done a lot with TSN and the rest of our partners as well. We had Kenny Smith doing kind of custom hits with responsible gaming on TSN. We use a lot of our value banks with our partners like MLSE to promote RG in arena and prior to games and whatnot. So of course, there's, like seatbelts, I'm with you in a world where everyone needs to have that sense of security and control. And I don't think any operator is ever going to be doing enough for responsible gaming. But with TSN, we've really tapped into ensuring that Takia, for example, is signing off with responsible gaming messaging on FanDuel Sunday or FanDuel Primetime. And we're going to continue to just deepen those efforts with TSN.
Tom, I think some of our Gaming News Canada audience say they obviously, they see the responsible gambling coverage, they see the commercials. As Alana says, everybody always thinks there can be more done. I think for anybody that doesn't have a sportsbook account or an online casino account, they maybe don't understand how much responsible gambling and how many tools are within that app when you go in to play a game. And I think FanDuel just launched before the holidays the MySpend program, which I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's almost another layer of protection for your customers.
Yeah, I think, a big piece of why legislation was so important around this industry was introducing and also incentivizing having these tools front and center. And so for us, it's not just a matter of, doing the right thing. It's also a good business decision. And so, MySpend is a perfect example of that. A lot of times what we see among folks that may develop a problem with gambling, a lot of times they just start to lose sight of exactly how much it is they're wagering. And they're thinking a lot about the wins, but they're overlooking some of the losses. And so with the MySpend tool, we wanted to provide a lot more visibility for the user on, exactly how they're tracking from a profit and loss standpoint, and an opportunity to intervene every opportunity that we get to say, hey, this is how you're tracking. Are you sure that you're fit to play? And kind of that constant reminder of exactly how you're tracking is pretty important for them to not get kind of caught up in the game, which happens, which can occasionally happen to people. So I think, again, it's not only about doing the right thing, it's also about protecting the industry as a whole and just trying to get better and better at how we can intervene in those situations.
What's been your customers' reaction to MySpend? Are they taking advantage of it?
Yeah, no, it's been very positive, and we've put a lot of media spend around it too. You may have seen, we've had a television commercial around it, display ads, obviously in the app. So it was well adopted, and I think the premise too, what would we'd love to see happen and has been happening is that has springboarded the use of other responsible gaming tools, deposit limits, wager limits, and it's, like I said, the seatbelt comment, right? It's, you wouldn't drive a car without a seatbelt. So it's just kind of one of those proactive measures that it doesn't mean you have to, be over the edge at any point, but just have fun and be responsible while you're doing it.
It almost feels, Atlanta, like it's one of those things where you use the seatbelt analogy, or in the case of maybe, you started drinking one glass of wine before dinner every night, and you have 2 glasses of wine. All of a sudden there's a study that comes out and says, hey, maybe having 2 glasses of wine a night isn't a good idea, which we probably knew. But I almost wonder if MySpend, again, as Tom and you both mentioned, there are responsible gambling tools within the app. But I think just having a new product come out is just a reminder, oh yeah, hey, I should maybe take a look at how much I'm spending and what am I winning and losing. And I think it's just a good reminder for people that this is supposed to be a fun thing to do.
Exactly. And we're very proud of that campaign because the premise behind it was that, not having visibility into that kind of stuff is kind of like shooting in the dark. And it was a fun play on a basketball analogy. So we try to make those campaigns not be overly serious, but also provide insight into exactly what the tool's delivering and, how it can appeal to the player.
Yeah, it's like the parent. If you're seeing it that you're lecturing to your kids, they're probably going to run out of the room, right?
Exactly.
Hey, Alan, I want to finish up here and just talk about, FanDuel's been pretty committed to investing in women's sports for a couple of years now, and obviously, the last 12 to 18 months has just been a game changer. I mean, obviously, Caitlin Clark has had a massive impact on that. Here in Canada, we see the launch of the Professional Women's Hockey League and what a hit that's been. And I think, again, in early December, FanDuel announced a new partnership with the PWHL and I think along betting lines and also your streaming strategy as well. But can you just talk a little bit about your decision to make that commitment to the new Women's Hockey League?
It was an easy one. I'll say that. I'm actually, from a personal perspective, super proud of the work we've done at FanDuel, but across both the borders. It's a total collective effort. So very excited to announce our PWHL partnership. It's just allowed us to strengthen also our support with women's sports, whether that be through our TSN properties or obviously through the partnership. And we're looking forward to deepening that with a few campaign assets and things like that as it rolls out. But our trading team and whatnot have been working super hard to deepen the markets and really drive that fan engagement. The women on the ice for the PWHL are phenomenal, and those storylines are amazing, and everyone should be paying attention to them. And we have player props to help complement those stories and get folks excited and more viewers. There is definitely a correlation between that. On the streaming side, it is in the US only for the moment. But we're looking to see what opportunities might be brought here in Canada to exactly what I just said, just have that strength and correlation between, the engagement you can get through betting and also watching and ensuring that you're supporting these amazing women. Hey,
Alan, just a follow up. There's a valid debate to be made around prop betting and people getting into trouble. But at the same time, from a perspective of the leagues, these player prop bets really do help promote players. And I think with the women's hockey game, of course, any of us have followed women's hockey casually. We're going to know who Hillary Knight is and Marie-Philippe Poulin and Natalie Spooner and some of those high-level stars of the game. But we're not going to be quite as familiar with some of those, Darryl Watts comes to mind off the top of my head, with some of those other players. And I think that's something that sometimes gets forgotten about as well, is this legal sports betting industry has allowed leagues and teams to help promote and profile their athletes.
And there's actually a lot of research online that talks about exactly what you mentioned, and it's called the fame gap. That unfortunately women have a much larger fame gap than men do because they're not being talked enough about in storylines, and their names don't come up as frequently, so they don't get that remembrance. And that's also just what we're hoping through our media partnerships too, just outside of betting and supporting from a spend perspective, so these stories can get told a little bit louder. But it is the fame gap that we need to close across all women's sports.
Hey, like marketing campaigns, in probably 98% of the cases, there has to be ROI. I just wonder, in the case of a company like FanDuel stepping up supporting women's sports, if maybe the ROI is put a little bit off to the side and really is the right thing to do. And we've seen here in Canada, Scotiabank has stepped up in a big way on behalf of women's sports. Canadian Tire has stepped up in a big way on behalf of women's sports. It's an exciting time for women's sports in this country. We're going to have a women's soccer league here in 2025. We're going to have a WNBA franchise in Toronto just a little over 12 months from now. How important is it just to be a good corporate citizen at a time like this and to kind of throw your money where your mouth is?
I'd say also it's less about the right thing to do and just strategically what we should be doing. You can see the rise in the WNBA and the Toronto Tempo, and the ROI will be there. I think those are conversations that we don't necessarily have with men's sports, that we're trying to change a little bit of that conversation with women's, that there is a lot of substantial benefit that it can bring to your brand. And it compounds over time, especially getting in early and supporting these women. So I would say it's not necessarily pushed off to the side. Of course, we're a business, but like any business, we're looking for the right strategic partner. And that's, I would feel, how we make our decisions, and likely how, the PWHL and all the other teams and leagues are making their decisions as well.
Hey, Tom, it might not be quite as exciting as the Super Bowl, but I got to think that, Caitlin Clark entering her second season in the WNBA, that's a great story. And again, anytime you have a superstar player, that helps, whether it's attendance, merchandise sales, television ratings, streaming numbers, and sports betting numbers. Having a new superstar like this is very good for the sport business across the board.
Hey, you may or may not know this, Steve, but I'm an Iowa native. I went to the University of Iowa, so I personally have a dog in that fight. But to your point, it's been amazing. I mean, you can imagine in the U.S. the kind of player prop numbers we see behind Caitlin Clark, and of course, it's great to see that not only does that drive more viewership of the league, but it also keeps folks engaged for longer, because they want to see if she's going to hit 6 3-pointers by the end of the game, even if it's not a close game. So I think that's all great, and obviously she's at the center of the conversation. But what I've been most excited about is kind of the residual effects from it. You see like Angel Reese, Cameron Brink, you're seeing more and more of these players come to the forefront. And even since I've relocated up to Canada, just seeing the excitement around Toronto Tempo and all of that, I think there's a very synergistic component across all of this that just leads to more fan engagement and more excitement around the storylines. And so obviously it benefits us, but it benefits the WNBA as a whole, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think it's just really neat. And I mean, I'm someone, I grew up in a family with 3 boys, but my mom and dad started the first women's hockey team in my small town. I actually refereed in the first unofficial World Women's Hockey Championship back in 1987. I had 2 daughters that played hockey. I've coached. I mean, I've got a real passion. Alan, I just think it's so cool now to be able to turn on the television on a Tuesday night and watch a PWHL game. And 2 years ago, we couldn't do that. And I've never watched more basketball as I did last summer watching Caitlin Clark. She's just a special athlete. And again, she's right there with a Serena Williams or Nancy Lopez going way back in women's golf. But she's a superstar athlete, a generational type player who's just one of those people you have to watch when she's on TV.
Yeah, and it's also really exciting just to have this in Canada, right? Like the US had a few other women's leagues, and obviously the WNBA is, quote unquote global, but to get the tempo, to get PWHL teams and a league in Canada, Diana Matheson's doing an amazing job with, the soccer league that she's putting on as well. It's just the push to get talent back home in Canada has been really amazing to see, and something that I've been personally really excited about.
Okay, before we let you two go, we need a Super Bowl pick for Sunday. Alana, ladies first. Who do you like?
So I'm going to go with the Eagles because I feel like if I cheer for them, it will justify that they beat the Packers.
I love that logic. How about you, Tom?
I think the Chiefs are taking it for a third time in a row. I think we're in the middle of a dynasty, whether we like it or not. And so, yeah, I think it's hard to bet against the Chiefs on this one.
Okay, that's Tom Burdakin, the Vice President of Marketing for FanDuel. Alana Della Vedova, the Director of Content Activations and Brand. Hey, this was a lot of fun, you two. Always enjoy talking to you, Alana, and I'm glad we were able to convince you to come back for a second time, Tom. Well, you've got a bit of catching up to do with Alana, but we're going to we'll try to do that in the next few months, all right?
Sounds great to me.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you. That's it for this edition of the Gaming News Canada show presented by GBG PLC. You can always find us at gamingnewscanada.ca, also on Substack, on the GNC YouTube channel, and the various podcast platforms. Again, really grateful to Tom Burdakin and Alana Della Vedova for joining us this week, and we will see everybody again very soon.